What are you living for? When you die, are all the things that you've worked for going to die along with you? Or are they going to be things that you can carry with you into eternity? Jesus addresses this in Matthew chapter 6 as he continues his Sermon on the Mount. Let's look in verse 19. He says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal." Let's pause there. He's telling us not to lay up treasures. What are these treasures that he's talking about? Well, down in verse 24, he does mention money. So there's an aspect of this that is physical, right? Don't store up money and physical possessions for yourself and put your hope in those things, because ultimately, literally, moths are going to get in it. And if you can have all sorts of precious metals, but they're going to rust, or even if they last, thieves are going to come in. They're going to get stolen, right? So he's saying don't store up physical treasures, but I think there's more to this. If you go back in chapter 16, if you go back to verse 1, he says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people." Why? In order to be seen by them. Like giving away good stuff in public so that people can see. He's warning us against living for the approval of other people. Skip down to verse 5. He says, he's talking about prayer, and he says, when you pray, don't be like the hypocrites. They stand in the synagogues at the street corners. Why? That they may be seen by others. They're praying in a certain way for the attention of others and the approval of others. He doesn't stop there. You go down to verse 16, and he talks about fasting. That tells us not to fast like the hypocrites, because they do it in this way that their fasting may be seen by others. They're working for earthly approval. So I think whenever he gets here to verse 19 and he says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, I believe he's talking not only about the physical possessions, but also about things like the approval of mankind, that ultimately when you die, that is also going to pass away with you. That metaphorically, moth and rust destroys this, or people can steal that. Think about even some of the most famous people in history. Someone might have built a monument for them, but that monument, in a lot of cases, it's either torn down later or it gets forgotten and it's now out in the middle of the woods where no one knows, or people have no idea what the name is. Ultimately, when you die, is that approval of mankind going to go with you? No, it's probably going to die along with you. So what's the alternative? Instead, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, instead of on this earth, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. These are eternal treasures that can't be taken. Seek the reward that God gives in secret, not in front of other people. The reward that God gives is eternal. So then he finishes off by saying, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So in all of this, this is in the end a heart issue. If we are putting all our stock in the things of this world, if we're putting all of our hope in our physical possessions, in our money, in our riches, in our comforts, or if we're putting all of our hope in the approval of people, if we're putting our hope in what people think about us and how people view us, and whether we build up fame in our own lives, ultimately our hearts will be stuck on the things of the world. And whenever we die and those things perish, our heart will perish along with them, and it will be far from God for eternity. But alternatively, if we seek the things above where Christ is, like it said when we were studying in Colossians, if we seek the things above where Christ is, our heart will also be laid up in heaven where our treasures are, and our heart will thrive eternally. No one can steal our heart away from God in eternity, and our heart will be set eternally on the eternal value of God Himself. So what's that look like? In this life, it looks like, instead of hoarding or trying to buy the next most expensive thing for my pleasure or for my comfort, instead, give your money, be generous to things that have eternal value. Instead of worrying about how you look in front of other people, try and turn the spotlight away from yourself and towards God. Seek God's glory in your life. Consider what you're living your life for. When you die, will what you're living for die along with you? Or is it something that you will take with you into eternity? Because wherever your treasure is, there your heart will be also.